My mom is in critical condition. Please come to the hospital right away.
I was stunned by the sudden call from my brother-in-law, Ryan, who was crying on the phone.
What? We're in the middle of her funeral over here.
There was a brief silence as neither of us could understand what was happening. Then Ryan shouted,
My mom is still alive. Don't say such unlucky things.
I was completely bewildered, not knowing what was going on. If Ryan's mother is with him, then who was the person whose funeral we are holding right now? Unsure of which words were true, I finished the funeral and immediately headed to the hospital where the other mother-in-law was supposed to be.
No way. Could something like this really happen?
That began the stormy days of my life. My name is Emily, a 32-year-old who works from home. I met Brian, who is 2 years older than me, through a mutual friend. 2 years ago, I thought I could be happy with someone as kind and cheerful as him, so we got married. I lost my parents early in life, and my grandmother who raised me also passed away 5 years ago, leaving me without any family. My grandmother showered me with all the love she could, but from a young age, I always longed for a warm family where both parents were around. It was my cat, Mikey, that helped soothe my loneliness. I got him from a friend when he was just a kitten. He's now 6 years old and heavy enough to feel quite substantial when he sits on my lap.
Calico cats are a sign of good luck, especially if they are male. I'm sure Mikey will bring you happiness.
My grandmother once said with a gentle smile as she stroked Mikey. Brian also lost his father early in life, so he understood my feelings well. His mother, Diana, and brother, Ryan, were also very compassionate people. Diana, in particular, was thrilled to have a daughter and treated me like her own. I cherished her like my own mother. Since my in-laws lived far away, we could only visit 2 or 3 times a year. Still, the days spent cooking with Diana and hanging out with Ryan were happy ones. Then, one day, Brian came home with a gloomy face.
The thing is, Mom was in a car accident about a month ago.
What? Really?
She survived, but she broke her hip and will be needing care even after she's discharged.
This news hit me like a ton of bricks. According to Brian, Ryan was also caught off guard and was late in letting us know.
Even so, that's pretty distant. If something major happened to Diana, I would have rushed over right away.
Since Ryan, who's single, couldn't provide daytime care, he asked for my help.
I work from home, and I love Diana, so I don't mind at all.
Thanks, Emily. I knew you'd say that. I'll help out on my days off.
Brian smiled warmly, and the next day, he brought Diana over to our house. However, she looked completely different from before. Her hair, which she always kept neatly done, was disheveled, and she seemed like a shadow of her former self. I felt sorry for her, thinking about how much pain and treatment she must have endured. From then on, my life of working from home while providing care began. Since Diana couldn't walk on her own, I always had to support her when moving, which was quite challenging. On top of that, Brian, whom I had been counting on, started coming home late, saying he was busy with work and even had to work on weekends. He didn't keep his promise to help with the caregiving, and I was internally frustrated that things weren't going as expected. Furthermore, for some reason, once kind Diana had completely changed. As soon as she started living with us, she began treating me harshly.
The food is bland and terrible.
I'm sorry. But you mentioned before that you prefer bland food for health reasons.
Shut up. A daughter-in-law shouldn't talk back.
When I made eggplant fritters, which she said she liked, she didn't even touch them, saying,
Eggplant is the worst thing in the world.
I thought she was just frustrated because she couldn't move her body as she wanted, so I endured it. However, about a month after Diana started living with us, I fell ill. Though I had always been healthy, I started feeling nauseous after meals, frequently had diarrhea, and felt dizzy. I thought about going to the hospital, but I thought it was stress from the unfamiliar nursing care life and the verbal abuse from Diana, so I tried to cover it up with medicines I kept at home. After a while, whenever I returned home from running errands or shopping, I started noticing strange things like chairs being moved around or items that should have been in the fridge missing.
Diana, did you come into the kitchen while I was out?
What? You know I can't move around on my own. Use your brain, you idiot.
At that moment, Mikey hissed loudly, his fur standing on end as he glared at Diana. Ever since Diana started treating me harshly, Mikey had begun hissing at her whenever he saw her. I thought to myself,
There's no way Diana, who can't move on her own, could be moving things around. But something is clearly wrong in the house. Could it be a burglar?
Then, the strange occurrences continued. Mikey, who was always so energetic, started walking around looking unsteady and sick. I rushed to take him to the vet, and the doctor said it looked like he had suffered a severe blow to the abdomen. I got some medication and returned home from the vet, only to hear the sound of the shower running.
What? Brian shouldn't be home at this hour. Who is it?
I quietly peeked into the bathroom and found Diana lying there naked, blood flowing from her head.
Oh my gosh! Diana, are you okay?
She seemed to groan a little, but she was mostly unconscious. There was blood in the bathtub, so she might have hit her head when she fell.
But she shouldn't be able to move on her own. How did she end up in the bathroom?
Though I puzzled, I quickly called an ambulance and tried to contact Brian. However, he didn't pick up. Diana was taken to the hospital, but despite the treatment, she never regained consciousness and passed away. The doctor said that a blood vessel in her brain likely ruptured suddenly, and hitting her head when she fell was the fatal blow. Even though she had been cold to me since moving in, she was originally a kind person. As I wiped away my overflowing tears with a handkerchief, I tried calling Brian again, and this time, he finally answered.
Brace yourself. Your mom has passed away.
What? Wasn't it you?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Oh, no, I'll be right there.
He then rushed to the hospital shortly after. I was bothered by his strange reaction on the phone, but at that time, I just thought he must have been deeply shaken. After the police finished their investigation, Diana's body was going to be stayed in a funeral home. Since Brian didn't have many relatives, he suggested we should send her off quietly, just the two of us. Then, he started heading out, saying he had to take care of some paperwork.
Wait a second. I need to contact Ryan at least.
Oh no, that's not necessary.
Huh? Why not?
When I tried to call Ryan, Brian hurriedly snatched the phone from my hand.
He got transferred overseas and can't come back right away. I'll let him know later.
Since when?
Right after Mom collapsed.
That's why he never came to visit her even once. I thought it was odd.
After we returned home, I was feeding Mikey when I suddenly remembered something. Since things in the fridge had occasionally gone missing and Mikey's health had been concerning me, I had set up a pet camera. With everything going on, I hadn't even checked it.
Maybe I'll find out how Diana got to the bathroom if I look at it.
I played back the footage from the day I installed the camera, and I was stunned.
What? What's going on? Is this really the kind Diana I knew?
The footage showed something completely unexpected. My mind was filled with questions, and I had no idea what to believe or who to trust anymore. I was left in shock. I tried asking Brian when he got back, but for some reason, he avoided me and shut himself in his study. While all this was happening, Diana's body was brought to the funeral home, and we started preparing for the funeral. It was a lonely affair, with just the two of us and a priest to read Mass. The next day, while we were holding the funeral for Diana, I received a call from Ryan, but but I couldn't answer. Once the chants were finished, I stepped out and called him back.
Mom suddenly collapsed and is in critical condition. Please come to the hospital right away. Brian isn't answering his phone, so Emily, could you contact him please?
Ryan said this in a sorrowful voice and then broke down in tears.
What? We're in the middle of the funeral for your mom right now.
Don't be ridiculous. Mom is still alive. Don't say such unlucky things.
I mean, I'm serious. Where are you, then?
Ryan, who was furious at first, suddenly said something strange.
Maybe.
Anyway, I needed to confirm whether what he said was true. Thus, after the funeral ended, I asked Brian for a favor.
I haven't been feeling well lately, and when I went to the doctor, they found something serious. I just got a call, so could you come with me to hear the doctor's explanation?
And do they know the cause?
Well, they say it's a terminal illness.
That's terrible.
Brian pretended to be sad and looked down, but for some reason, it seemed like he was smirking. Then, he agreed without hesitation to go to the hospital with me. When we arrived at the hospital and entered the room together, we were confronted with a shocking scene.
No way. How could this be?
There was Diana, who should have already been dead and buried, was lying in bed. Her hair was neatly arranged, and she had a calm expression. That was indeed the kind Diana I knew. The moment Brian saw Ryan and Diana, Brian bolted from the room. I chased after him, but he managed to get away.
Diana, please stay with us. It's me, Emily. Can you hear me?
When I spoke to Diana, a single tear ran down her cheek in silence. I stayed with them until the next day, and thanks to the dedicated efforts of the doctors and nurses, Diana survived her critical condition and began to recover.
To be honest, a month ago, Brian brought Diana to our home, saying she had been in a car accident and needed care because she couldn't move.
What are you talking about? Mom has been living with me this whole time.
What? Wait, if that's the case, who was the person staying in my house? She was so thin, but she looked exactly like Diana. In the end, she collapsed in the bathroom and passed away, so we held her funeral the other day.
As I continued talking, it turned out that Ryan had never been transferred overseas. He had been in the US the whole time. After thinking for a while, he said,
Listen, Emily. Here is the thing.
and began to tell me about something from the past that I didn't know. Listening to his story, everything that had happened up until then started to make sense. I asked him to take care of my now stable Diana, and I returned home to do some investigating.
I need to find some evidence. Oh, right. Is Mikey okay back at home?
When I arrived home, I went into Brian's study and opened his computer, where I found shocking evidence. I also discovered several incriminating items in his desk drawer, and I was boiling with anger.
I will never forgive him.
When I was about to rush out of the house and go to the police, suddenly, I heard Mikey's hiss echoing through the house. As I got startled, I turned around to see Brian coming at me with a furious expression.
You're not getting away. Give it up.
With holding a rope in his hands, he charged at me with a low, menacing voice. I tried to run, but he grabbed my arm at the front door.
Stop it! Somebody help me!
I screamed and struggled to break free, but I couldn't overcome his strength.
Shut up.
He gripped me even harder and was dragging me toward the living room when a shout rang out.
Hey Brian, what on earth are you doing? Let go of Emily.
With that, Ryan pulled him off me and twisted his arm behind his back.
I came because I couldn't shake off what Emily told me.
Hey, stop it. Don't get me wrong. This is just a marital argument. This has nothing to do with you.
Brian tried to bluff his way out, but Ryan didn't let up.
I learned from Ryan who the person you brought into the funeral home, pretending she was Diana, really was.
Hearing this, Brian's face changed. He then went quiet, realizing he was caught. To tell the truth, Diana had a twin sister, and they looked so much alike that it was impossible to tell them apart. However, their personalities were the exact opposite. Diana was kind and gentle, whereas Diana's sister, Nancy, was carefree and had a messy history with men. I heard that when she gave birth to Brian, no one even knew who the father was.
So, Ryan is Diana's son, and Brian is Nancy's son, is that right?
Man, Ryan, you even told Emily that nonsense.
In the end, Nancy didn't raise her child, namely Brian, and Diana adopted and raised him, unable to stand by with folded arms. According to Ryan, Nancy and Brian randomly met at a bar 3 months ago, and after that, they reconnected and started staying in touch.
And a month ago, Nancy came to you, asking for help because she was struggling financially, right?
That's why I told Brian he should stay away from Nancy. Nevertheless, pretending she was mom and bringing her into the house, he's out of his mind.
So, the person I was taking care of wasn't Diana, but her sister, Nancy.
I didn't lie. Nancy is still my mother, right? I just wanted to help my biological mom who needed care.
Brian began to justify himself as if he were some paragon of righteousness, trying to escape any blame. I was furious and felt like I might lose control.
Nancy didn't need any care. She was perfectly fine.
What are you talking about? She couldn't move on her own, and you were the one helping her.
Brian argued back, spitting out his words, so I showed him the pet camera footage I had saved on my phone. What was captured was Nancy moving freely around the house when I went out, and even kicking Mikey, who was hissing at her, with full force. The cause of Mikey's health problems was Nancy, but that wasn't all. Nancy took out my favorite tomato juice from the fridge, placed it on the counter, and put something into it. Then Brian came home and said,
That Emily, she's not weakening easily. Should we increase the dose a bit?
I'm shocked that this was the cause of my health issues. How dare you try to take my life? I never thought I was being given something strange to drink.
I don't know anything about that. Nancy did it on her own.
Don't joke around. You were discussing increasing the amount while adding something to the tomato juice.
Hey, calm down. I wouldn't have anything to gain from taking your life, so why would I do it?
Sweat was pouring down Brian's forehead, his eyes darting around nervously as he desperately denied it. Even at that moment, he wouldn't admit it. How cowardly could he be? I slammed down printed emails of his correspondence with his mistress right in front of him.
To think you were conspiring with your mistress to send me to the afterlife.
That was just a bit of fooling around, you know?
He was at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing like a fish.
I found a high-value life insurance policy in your desk drawer. And you were planning to use something slow-acting to make sure the police wouldn't suspect anything after I was gone. That's just too cruel.
He had promised Nancy a cut of the money if the plan succeeded, but it was all a lie. He and his mistress had planned to avoid getting their hands dirty and put all the blame on Nancy.
Thanks for laying out all the details in your emails with your mistress. There's no escaping now, so be ready to face the consequences.
You dug that deep? All right, if I throw away that computer, there's no evidence.
He tried to get up to grab his computer, but he couldn't move because Ryan had him in a tight hold.
Okay, I got it. Emily, I'm sorry. I'll break up with my mistress and work for you for the rest of my life, so please forgive me.
You two should own up to your crimes and make amends.
At that moment, the police arrived. Someone in the neighborhood had noticed the commotion and called them. As I watched Brian being taken away, crying and screaming, I muttered with a look of disdain.
Goodbye forever.
After that, I divorced Brian. He and his mistress were found guilty of plotting to take my life and ended up behind bars. I demanded compensation of $20,000 from each of them. Even after they get out, they will have a tough life ahead. It's been a year since then, and Diana is on the road to recovery. I visit her frequently and encourage my sweet mother-in-law. We promise to spend happy times together once she gets well. Mikey has also recovered and is bouncing around the house again. I'll continue to build a bright future together with the cat who saved me from a desperate situation.